a mastermind who killed American president. On November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, Lee Harvey Oswald, who was born on October 18, 1939, in New Orleans, Louisiana, United States, and passed away on November 24, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, was suspected of assassinating President John F. Kennedy. Within 2 days, he was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, 1911 to 1967, at the Dallas County Jail. Ruby was responsible for his death. When Stevenson was running for vice president in 1956, Kennedy came very close to becoming his running partner. As a result of the charismatic young New Englander's close call with victory and his televised speech of concession, Kefauver was awarded the nomination for vice president. He was able to enter about 40 million households across the United States. In an instant, he had risen to prominence as one of the most prominent political personalities in the nation. Even before then, he had already begun his campaign for the nomination in 1960. A journalist from a newspaper referred to him as a young man in a hurry. Kennedy was under the impression that he needed to redouble his efforts because of the prevalent belief that no Roman Catholic candidate could be elected president. In 1958, he ran for re-election to the Senate, and he used the election as a test of his popularity in the state of Massachusetts. He won by a margin of 874,608 votes, which was the highest margin of victory ever in the history of Massachusetts politics, and the largest margin of victory for any Senate candidate that year. John Fitzgerald Kennedy made the official announcement of his intention to run for president in January of 1960. Senators Hubert H. Humphrey of Minnesota and Lyndon B. Johnson of Texas were his primary competitors in the race between them. By winning the primary election in West Virginia, which is predominantly Protestant, Kennedy was able to force Humphrey out of the race and give a blow to the religious taboo that was held against Roman Catholics. In a videotaped speech delivered in front of a gathering of Protestant ministers in Houston, Texas, he once again addressed the Catholic issue by reiterating his commitment to the principle of the separation of church and state at the same time. After being nominated on the first ballot, he chose Johnson to be his running partner to ensure that the Democratic ticket was balanced. During his acceptance speech, John F. Kennedy made the following statement: "We stand today on the corner of a new frontier." After that, the term New Frontier became synonymous with the programs that he implemented during his presidency. In 1964, President John F. Kennedy was under the impression that Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona would be his opponent from the Republican Party. The idea that he might bury Goldwater under an avalanche of votes and therefore receive a mandate for significant legislative reforms was something that he was sure of. A disagreement between two Democrats, Governor John B. Connally Jr. and Senator Ralph Yarborough, in the state of Texas, where Vice President Johnson was born and raised, was one of the things that stood in the way of his plan. It was decided by the president to go on a tour of the state with both of the guys to demonstrate unity. On Friday, November 22, 1963, he and Jacqueline Kennedy were traveling through downtown Dallas in a motorcade while seated in an open limousine for the duration of the journey. At 12:30 p.m., the president was hit by 2 bullets from a rifle, one of which struck the base of his neck and the other hit him above the head. Following his arrival at Parkland Memorial Hospital, he was pronounced dead shortly after his arrival. Even though he was also severely injured, Governor Connally was able to recuperate. In the afternoon, at 2:38, Vice President Johnson took the oath of office as president. Accusations of murder were made against Lee Harvey Oswald, a Dallas resident who was 24 years old at the time. A local nightclub owner named Jack Ruby, who had connections to the criminal underworld, was the one who shot and killed Oswald 2 days later in the basement of a Dallas police station. Ruby was determined to kill Oswald. Later on, a presidential commission that was led by Earl Warren, the Chief Justice of the United States, concluded that neither the sniper nor his killer was part of any conspiracy, domestic or foreign, to assassinate President Kennedy. but that Oswald had acted alone in carrying out the assassination. After investigating from November 29, 1963, until September 24, 1964, a special President's Commission on the Assassination of President John F. Kennedy, also known as the Warren Commission because it was led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, concluded that Oswald was the sole individual responsible for firing the shots that resulted in Kennedy's death. Furthermore, the commission found no evidence to suggest that either Oswald or Ruby had been involved in any conspiracy. After conducting an investigation that lasted for 2 years, a special committee of the United States House of Representatives, known as the Assassinations Committee, determined in January 1979 that a second assassin may have also fired a shot and that there may have been a conspiracy. At this point, the evidence is still very much up for debate. The birth of Oswald occurred 2 months after the passing of his father. Subsequently, his mother remarried and remained married for 3 years. However, the family relocated rather frequently between 1920 and 1956. It was in October of 1956 when Oswald decided to leave high school and enlist in the United States Marine Corps. He began displaying pro-Soviet and politically extreme ideas, and on September 11, 1959, he was granted release from the Marine Corps based on a hardship plea. He was a decent shot, but he was apathetic to the military. After 9 days, he embarked on a journey to the Soviet Union, where he made an unsuccessful attempt to get citizenship. He started a relationship with Marina Nikolaevna Persakova in Minsk, where he was posted to work, and they tied the knot on April 30, 1961. After 13 months, in June of 1962, he was finally able to return to the United States of America with his wife and their daughter, June Lee, who was 3 months old. In January 1963, Oswald purchased a revolver with a .38 caliber, and in March, he purchased a rifle with a telescopic scope. In Dallas on April 10, he allegedly fired a shot at Edwin A. Walker, a former Army commander who was considered to be an ultra-rightist, but the shot missed him. In the latter part of that month, he left his wife with a friend in Dallas and traveled to New Orleans. While there, he established a one-man branch of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee and distributed leaflets that were enthusiastic about Castro. During September, he traveled to Mexico City, where, as stated by the Warren Commission, he made unsuccessful attempts to obtain a visa for Cuba and to obtain authorization from the Soviet Union to return to the Soviet Union. Following his return to Dallas in October, he was successful in securing employment at the Texas School Book Depository. At 12:30 p.m. on November 22, 1963, Oswald is said to have fired 3 rounds from a window on the 6th level of the depository building. These shots were supposedly fired by Oswald using his mail-order rifle. The shots were fired in an open-car motorcade in Dealey Plaza, and they resulted in the death of President John F. Kennedy and the injury of Texas Governor John B. Connally. Patrolman J.D. Tippett, who suspected that Oswald resembled the suspect who was already being detailed over the police radio, stopped Oswald about a mile away from his rooming house. Oswald had taken a bus and a cab to get to his rooming home, and then he left. It was 1:15 in the afternoon when Oswald used his mail-order handgun to shoot Tippett. At approximately 1:45 p.m., Oswald was taken into custody by law enforcement personnel who were responding to reports of a suspect in the Texas Theater. It was at 1:30 in the morning on November 23 that he was formally arraigned for the murder of Abraham Lincoln Kennedy. A disturbed Dallas nightclub owner named Jack Ruby opened fire on Oswald on the morning of November 24, while he was being transported from a detention cell to an interrogation office. Ruby was on his way to the interrogation office. Ruby's trial for murder took place on March 14, 1964, and she was found guilty of the crime and condemned to death. The conviction was overturned by an appeals court in Texas in October 1966. However, Ruby passed away on January 3, 1967, due to a blood clot that was worsened by cancer. This occurred before a new trial could be held that year. So this is the end of our today's video. Do Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.